Hello YouTube. Hello, hello. Today, another speed lab. Another speed lab's coming. So today we have Paul, as you guys see on the screen. No longer 30 FPS. So as you have already seen, I mean, everyone can see, Paul is on the screen. We have Paul today. So Kazuya versus Paul. This matchup, I think it's not gonna be that often that you're gonna be playing against Paul in general, because he's not that popular. I mean, he's okay in popularity, but normally he was like number 1 or number 2. Usually he's very, very popular, but he's not as popular anymore. So you won't be seeing him as much. He's a little bit rarer. So because of that as well, I don't have that much Paul experience, like against Paul. I don't have that much experience against the character. So maybe there are some things I will be missing. Most likely there will be. But Paul is definitely not a weak character. Definitely not. I lapped him. I checked out good Paul players sometimes on how they play and the setups they can do. And he has some good stuff. So we'll be talking about him in general right now. So first, let's talk about game plan, right? As a Kazuya, usually our game plan revolves around staying in range. Usually in this kind of range, just so if they whiff, you can electric them, right? Usually that's the range you want to be in. You're basically whiff punish electric range. But you also do keep out electrics. Sometimes, if you want to play keep out. Usually, keep out electrics are very strong, but you can't be too predictable with them. So your usual game plan is like keep out electrics. And if they respect you too much, you know, maybe 50-50 them or something like that. Find an opening, basically. That's your normal playstyle. But I don't think the playstyle changes too much when it comes to Paul. Because Paul, usually when he wants to... Wait, let me do this. When he wants to come in, he will usually not high crush unless they do something like this, right? Which is one of the most common lows he has. I'm going to be talking about his lows. There's one more low that I have to talk about. But I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. So this low I just want to mention because this is one of the tools that but Paul players use to go in if they also want to high crush a bit. Right, high crushing a low, which will beat electrics, and electric will not hit in this situation. So this is really, really good in that, but as I said, it doesn't really change your playstyle too much. Clean, hello man. Yeah, I'm also gonna talk about it a little bit later, because that's a new stance move, I think, if I remember correctly. But this move isn't that scary, to be honest, so that's why I'm not even saying to change your playstyle, or don't do as many electrics because of it. It's because it's 0 on hit, so it doesn't really give a Paul player any plus frames. Although it does have this counter property, which can be scary. But it does 17 damage, not 17, 18 damage. 0 on hit. And most importantly, it's minus 14 on block, right? So if you just block it once, you get a pretty decent punish as a Kazuya player. I mean, Jin would get a launcher there as well, and Raven, but as a Kazuya player, we do get to TP because it's 13 frames fast. So it's not too bad. So other than that, Paul's options aren't that good when it comes to high crushing. That good. But of course, Paul is still a very, very good character. He can threaten a lot when it comes to his whiff punishment. In this kind of range, they can bait out your electrics, basically. And maybe whiff punish with this, which can be a good whiff punishing tool. Sometimes the Paul player uses it right. Can whiff punish with down forward too sometimes, but usually it's a keep out tool. But you have to be careful with the electrics still. Like, you can't abuse them in any way. If the Paul player is good, be very, very careful, obviously. But it just goes to almost all characters. Don't have like predictable electrics. So that's about game plan. More or less game plan stays the same, more or less. Maybe adapt to the opponent and how he plays, but more or less it's the same game plan. But now let's talk about Paul as a character. So Paul. This guy still has the same kind of style, I guess I can say, as he had in the previous games, when he has absurd damage, absolutely absurd damage, and good mix-up potential when he's up close in your face. He's very, very strong when it comes to these two things. So whenever he launches you, or wall splats you, or anything of the sort, he just deals a lot of damage just because this move exists. Deathfist, right? That deals a lot of damage. Of course, it's not only because of this, but this just makes it so much better. I'm going to talk about this move a little bit later as well, because it's also a heat move. But there's a lot to cover, basically. So, about Paul. As I said, mix-up is amazing. Mix-up's very strong. As I already said, he's also pretty good at damaging you, so you shouldn't get launched normally. But he's also pretty decent at pressuring you now as well. He had a couple of new additions, and I think going over the new additions is gonna be like the best way to start right now. I'm gonna talk about some other stuff later, but for now, the new additions. One of the best new additions, in my opinion, is this move, which is up forward 2. It's a very strong move. There's also this forward 4, which is also very strong, and also down forward 4. These are very, very strong moves, so let's talk about them separately. For now, let's talk about up forward 2. So up forward 2 is a high heat engager, does 22 damage. It is linear, you can actually sidestep him, and it's a high. I already said that, you can duck it. But what makes this really, really scary, usually, is when the Paul player wants to start pressuring you, especially at the wall. This move becomes scary because not only do you not want to duck, because he has good mids. I'm going to talk about the mids later when I go into his stances and sways. So he has good mids. You don't want to duck that much, but you also don't want to step that much because he has decent tracking moves. Moves that track well. Like, I'll just give you an example of this one. There you go, this one. So this move has decent tracking. It's not tracking anymore, it used to be, but it has decent tracking, which is a safe mid. Also wall splats, right? Pretty good. And this is also one example that's a good mid. Right? You also don't want to be ducking too much. And if you sidestep too much, maybe you'll get cleft by QCF4, not QCF, QCB4. So it just quick examples. I'm going to be talking about these moves a little bit later as well, a little bit more in depth, but a quick example why you don't want to duck or sidestep this that much at the wall are those moves. So this becomes much stronger, and as I said, it's +5. And it's a heat engager, right? So it launches. That's a launch. It's pretty good. Very, very good. And one of the homing moves that I mentioned that is very strong, that makes you, not want to sidestep Paul that much, is forward 4. So this is a 22 frame mid. It's a new addition. It's a 22 frame mid homing move, which doesn't give a combo on heat dash, but it gives you like something guaranteed. I guess something like down back 2 maybe. I'm not sure what you get guaranteed here, but I'm guessing down back 2. So forward 4 is very strong because it's a mid tracking move that's a heat engager, and it's safe. So you can't really do much about it because it also has a very good range. Like, look at where it's hitting me. I'm blocking it from like range 3. It has very deceptive range. You might think this will whiff. It does not whiff. There you go, I made it whiff. Right? So it has a lot of range, so it's very hard to backdash. You can't sidestep it obviously because, it's a tracking move. And you can't really punish it either because it's safe. It's -8. It's not even -9. To be honest, it doesn't matter that much, but it's not even -9. It's -8. Afterwards, you can check him. Obviously, he's right in your face in a lot of minus, so it's not that bad of a situation. But there's not much you can do against this move. I'm not even sure if you can parry it, because it's a jumping move. I'm not sure if you can parry it. Maybe you can. But this Kazuya doesn't really matter. It's a kick, and we cannot parry kicks. You power crush it, but it's a one-hit move. You don't really want to throw out your power crushes like that sometimes. Maybe on a hard read. But yeah, this is pretty strong. Very, very good move. Right? It's the instant heat, and I'm going to talk about the instant heat a little bit later too. Now let's talk about the other move I talked about, down forward 4. So this is one of the strongest additions he has. Down forward 4. This is a very, very strong move. So it's a mid 17 frames. Comes out pretty fast. So let's see the properties. And it's only -2 for Paul. That means the Paul player can either jab, like 1-2, if you do something slow, or sidestep after it, and he will usually evade most of your stuff. And the way to beat this is to be sidestepping a specific direction. If you sidestep to the left, it will more or less track you. There's pretty decent tracking to the left, as you guys can see. Right? I'm trying to step it, I'm still getting hit. Decent tracking to the left. But if you step to the right, it's a little bit less tracking. And you can more or less consistently step it. And if you do it, always launch it. Unless you're me, I suck at electrics. Yeah, sidestep electric, right? Or sidestep whatever your launcher is. Or some other punish, whatever you want to do. So that's the weakness it has. But the move is very, very strong because of the counter property it has. Of course, on hit it's +8. It's really, really good. But what makes this move strong is this property right here. Paul's weak side left. I prefer to the right because something like down 1, for example. I want to mention this a little bit later, but let's mention this right now as well. I usually prefer to sidestep a Paul to the right because something like down 1 can be stepped to the right, but it fully tracks to the left. And Paul players usually use down 1 a lot, and I mean a lot. They usually use this for steppers. So for down 1, sidestep right is very good, so that's why I usually prefer the right side. Usually. But sidestep left for certain moves also can work. It can, definitely can. Okay, let's continue talking about this move though. So the counter property is why this move is so strong. So this move is +14 on countered, and this +14 gives guaranteed hits. So for example, something like this into back 1-2, this is guaranteed. Fully guaranteed. This into shoulder, fully guaranteed. So what does this mean? This means at the wall, if you get counter hit, you're gonna get wall splatted. Counter hit back 1 to wall splat, back 1 to tornado into a lot of damage, at least 70, right? So you have to be very, very careful when it comes to this move. You have to either avoid it or at least not get counter hit by it. So be very careful. This is a very strong move. But the biggest issue is this right here. So this is the new move he got as well, 4-2. This right here. It's a 14 frame high that has very good range. And this becomes guaranteed in that situation. And gives Paul basically free heat. So that's one of the big reasons this move is also so strong. Because even in the neutral, if you get countered, you're gonna give Paul basically free heat, full bar, and he's gonna just start using his heat moves on you, which you usually don't want. I'm gonna cover his heat in the end, but it's you don't want that. Basically, you don't want that happening. Snake, hello. Okay, so that's also one of the moves that are that's very strong. But now let's talk about this move, which I covered a little bit. So down 1 is usually used by good Paul players if they see you sidestepping a lot. Usually people sidestep him to the left, right? Usually. And this move fully tracks to that side. You can't do anything about this move if you sidestep it to the left. No sidewalks or anything. Maybe Lily can, I'm not sure. But it's super weak to sidestep right. So if you ever see a Paul player using down 1 a lot, usually sidestep right is the answer. But about down 1, there's a lot more to the move than just this move. It also has some strings, which kind of makes you respect them. So usually it's -9, right? It's safe mid. It's usually -9. But it has 2 extensions. One is the 4, which can, be extended with this, but it's usually just this. Usually this is what happens. And there's also the deathfist extension, which can be charged. So first let's talk about the low. So this low right here, this basically has a hell sweep stagger if you block it. And that's why you'll almost never see a Paul player use this in the neutral. Almost never. The only time you will see this, like 95% of Paul players will not use it unless you're gonna die with this low. So down 1, this low, if this will kill you, that's when they will use it. So if your HP is low and you see a down 1, you should probably be ducking after it. Probably. But good Paul players also use this mind game in their advantage. So there's a little bit of mind games there. But yeah, with this is basically a round ender. Because even on hit, it's +17. That's a punish. Right? That's a punish as well. That's why people don't use it. Paul players just don't use it. But it is a round ender. It might catch you off guard and just kill you. So you have to be very aware of this move. And about the extension, like this one, this mid, you don't have to worry about if you block it, because, stagger. But if you do block it, it's -14. Always punish this. It's kind of hard to electric because of the block stance, a little bit weird for me personally, but just punish this however you like. It's -14. But now let's talk about the second extension. So if you hard duck here, usually you just want to fuzzy duck, right? Fuzzy and get up. This is what you usually want to do so you don't get mixed by this. So this deathfist is -17, which deathfists usually are, but also doesn't have as much pushback unless you backdash immediately. But no matter what, the electric here more or less reaches. So if you do block this, the instant one, more or less electric will reach. Maybe there are some situations where it won't, but it doesn't happen that often. I just messed up the punish so much, but electric works, basically. You can also back 4 for more consistent punishment, or forward 3, but I would suggest back 4 if you want a consistent punish, which also gives decent enough reward. It's not too bad. But now let's see the problematic thing about this, right? It's this charge up right here. The down 1-2 has a charge up, which usually doesn't do anything unless it gives you chip damage. Like the only thing it does is gives Paul chip damage and makes it safe. +9. This changes in heat, but as I said, I'm going to talk about the heat stuff later. What you can do about this is you can sidestep it to the right. Usually right works, and it tracks a little bit to the left. So if you do something like this, it might track you. But if you go to the right, it will not. So be a little bit careful about that. And usually, they also have the option to not charge it fully. Basically, they do this and just end a little bit early. They have that option as well. So you have to be careful about this string in general. Like, be aware that after down 1, there might be a charge up. And if you want to deal with it, you have to sidestep it with a big reward. And normally you would say that why sidestep it doesn't really do anything anyway, but in heat it changes and you kind of want to sidestep it sometimes, especially if they do it in the neutral. But as I said, I'm going to cover that a little bit later. So down 1-2 is the first charge move I want to talk about. So now let's talk about the second charge move. The second charge move is back to 1. And you'll see these moves a lot. Good Paul players and more or less every Paul player will use them because they're strong, especially in heat. So back to 1. Back to 1 is usually a -12 or mid-mid. If you block this, it's actually punishable. But as I said, this is the second charge up move. Right? So if you just hold 1, this charges up. Charge up. And does exactly the same thing as it does with the down 1. It becomes safe and does chip damage. But the big difference here is that Paul player is a lot of plus and in your face. So this becomes a little bit scarier. And it's also scarier because you cannot sidestep to the right in this situation if you're P1. You can either, you know, mash here, if you want to prevent this, or sidewalk to the left. So these are the ways to beat it. But the problem here is that the Paul players, if they realize that you're either mashing or sidewalking, usually they will finish this early. Like that. So they can charge up just a little bit and then finish it, right? So if you do mash, you're gonna get counter launched. And that's why I would normally suggest to sidestep and not actually press a button. There's an exception to this, but I'll cover this later when I go to heat stuff. But in the neutral, this is what you do, even against the heat version. If you wait a little bit and then sidestep left, or maybe sidewalk left, that's usually what you want to do in the neutral. Same with this, but change sides. In this situation, you have to sidewalk to the right. But I mean, if you're P2, you sidewalk to the right in this situation as well, but you get what I mean. You're forced crouch, so you can't really go right. You have to go to the way that you can. Okay, so that's the second charge up move. There's also this move, which is also a charge up, but this is a little bit less common. That's the word I was looking for. So 1+2 usually is a 28 frame mid, right? On the slower side. And can be charged up as much as you want. And it's max 71 frames. And this becomes an unblockable, right? This is unblockable. I think this is the only 3 charger moves he has. Of course you can sidestep this more or less easily. I think on the right is way more consistent on to the left. But the thing about this move is that it can be cancelled at any time. But still, sidestepping more or less beats it. I still want to cover this move because it's one of the charge-up moves he has. You don't see it that much. But you may get surprised if a Paul player uses it, so I just want to mention it. Okay. I think these are the only 3 charge up moves I wanted to mention. I'm gonna go back to them later when I cover Heat. But now let's cover one of the best additions, the neutral additions that Paul has, which will be used by a lot of good players, and they will spam this move a lot. And it's while standing 1-2. This move right here. Amr, hello. So this move is a mid while standing move that can be used in his crouch dashes, right? It's a while standing move, so in his crouch dash he can still use it. If the opponent, not the opponent, but the player is good enough, they know how to do it. I can't do it consistently, but I never practiced this, right? So this is doable from very far range. Let's say the Paul player is like pretty far, like here, right? And they want to check you with a mid. Imagine something like Fanga while standing 1. This is exactly the same thing. More or less the same thing. Right? I'm messing up the cancel there, but yeah, it's a very long range mid check if the Paul player decides to do it with a wave dash. Or they can just do it without it anyway, but usually you'll see the Paul player, if they're good, use the wave dash, not the wave dash, but the crouch dash, and then do the while standing 1-2. Now let's see the properties of this move. This move is very strong, and I'll explain why. So while staying 1-2, normally you would see, okay, it's -11, it's actually punishable, you can back 1-2 it, right, or 1-1-2. But the biggest problem about this move is that it can cancel into a backsway, which changes frames by a lot. So normally that's -11, with the backsway cancel, it suddenly becomes +1 for Paul. So Paul is actually plus here in this situation, and far away, which is a pretty bad situation for you. It's not that good. But the good thing is, Paul is kinda, well, in the backsway position. I was about to say stuck, but he's not really stuck in that stance. So he's backswaying. And normally, if he does backsway and doesn't do anything, something like this, for example, or even back 4, with enough range, this is a punish. If he backsways. But the strong thing about this particular thing is that that backsway can be cancelled at any time very easily. I just pressed up into back here. So this is a safe mid-mid, basically, that goes back to neutral most of the time. There we go. I think I blocked it correctly. I just want to showcase that back 4 won't work, right? Doesn't work. Back 1 won't even reach. Down back 1 won't even work. Even the 13 framer doesn't work here, right? So it's a safe mid-mid that goes into backsway. You can block anything. It's just not punishable. You can't do anything here. And he also will have access to backsway moves. So it's very important to know all of these properties because of this. Because that Paul players sometimes will abuse that to their advantage because they don't know what's happening. Like, you won't know what's happening, they will use the backsway moves. No Nina yet, no. So they will backsway into any kind of button, like a 2. Right? Or a 1. I'll talk about the backsway immediately after, by the way. But yeah, they might just abuse the backsway. But if you see them doing that, just remember that you actually have ways to check him. The fastest move he has in backsway is a 15 framer, which is a 4 or a 2. And he does not have a power crush here. He can cancel into a power crush, which is messed up that he can do that. I think he can do something like this. But it's a little bit more complicated. But he does not have a power crush in the backsway itself. The fastest move he can do is 15 frames. So if you do something like, let's say he does this, right? This will trade. Because +1, 15 frames, you know, if you know how frames work, you know why this trades. This will trade. So if you do something like a 13 framer, or like a 12 frame counter hit move, like a Magic 4, or even something like a 2-2 will work here. It will catch him. But one very important thing, like very important thing here, is that also good Paul players will be fishing for jabs in this situation. So if you do something like a high, let's say you do a Magic 4 or 2-2 like I was doing, they actually have a very good option to beat that, which is the backsway 1+2. Let's say I try to 2-2. It's a high crush. Jab doesn't work. Magic 4 will work, because Magic 4 has a good hitbox in this particular situation. But you also have to be very careful. If the Paul player delays that just a little bit, your Magic 4 will also whiff. So be careful about using highs in this situation as well. So one of the best things you can do is a 13 frame mid check. Something like down forward 4 is God's decent. You can also hit confirm it. And you know, get that damage. You're playing any other character, maybe something else. But as I also said, that hit confirm will not hit confirm, but that check won't always work. Because he can just block immediately after. He will be blocking that 13 framer. But at least he won't be able to pressure you. So that's important to know. But you don't always want to do that, because especially when it comes to Kazu's case, when you down forward 4, you're becoming -9, and Paul will be pretty close to you when he blocks that. So that's why you don't want to use that too much. You just don't. If you're playing any other character, maybe like Shaheen, if you down forward 1, it's not that good of a... Not that good, but it's not that big of a risk. You're like -1, I think. Or someone else with a good down forward 1 when there's -1. Or with extensions, right? It's not as bad. But with Kaz, you don't want to be checking him too much. Because, you know, down forward 4, -9, you don't want to be -9. Who wants to be -9? So be careful about that. As long as you know the properties, sometimes check him just so he knows you know he can't disrespect you too much, and then you play the mind game. But there's also one more property that's very, very strong about this move. So this is a mid, but this is not natural. You can block this, so let me showcase this. If you get hit by this first one, you can block the second one. It's not natural, which is pretty good, right? If it was natural, it would be very broken. It would be very, very strong. But the good thing about this move, one of the best things about this move, is the counter property. So it has a counter property as well. If you do press into the second one, counter hit, right? But you might just see that it was +3. But with backstay frames change, I already demonstrate that. So if you do something like this, and it counter hits, it's +15 suddenly. Checking with down back 1, that's even worse, because this is -10. It's even worse. You can, but yeah. So yeah, counter hit is +15. But what does that +15 mean? It actually means he gets something guaranteed. It's that kind of plus. So let's say you know, do this. This is all guaranteed. That's guaranteed. So at the wall, this will wall splat you as well. So this is a very, very strong property that it has. Especially if the Paul player just does this a lot. Just this, right? Just the wall standing 1. Because just the wall standing 1 by itself, it is punishable, but you also don't want to punish it sometimes. Right? You also don't want to punish it sometimes. And now you respect it a lot. Now they will just do the 2. Because, you know, oh, this guy's punishing my wall standing 1. Do the 2. Right? That's one mind game. The second mind game is that it has a delay on it. It's either exactly. It has a lot of delay. Like I can delay it almost as long as I want. So if you do press after it, you will also get countered into that guaranteed stuff. The thing about the delay is that it's actually steppable to the right, which is why I like stepping to the right so much. But you cannot step this to the left. But beware that normally you cannot step this. If they don't delay it, you can't step this. You're gonna get hit. You're just getting hit. Right? +2, 17 damage. Normally you don't want that. 2 Goose, thank you for following. So yeah, this move, you'll see Paul players use this a lot. I mean, a lot. A lot. So be aware of the properties it has and just, you know, act accordingly. Because the Paul player will be using a lot of mind games with this. And usually the mind games are pretty strong. It's really, really good. Very good move. As I said, it can be used from mid-range, right? That just hits. It just hits. Can you punch parry the second hit? I think I tried once in the lab and it didn't work on the immediate timing. You cannot. You can punch parry it if they delay it, but not the undelayed version. You just get countered. It's very, very good. It's very strong. As I said, one of the best moves he has. And yeah, it's not worth it. Definitely not worth it. You don't even get that much of a reward on the punch parry, so Okay, so now let's talk about the sway. This sway right here. Since I talked about this into back sway, let's see what options he has in his back sway in this situation. How do you crouch dash into while standing 1? You crouch dash and then let go of crouch dash down forward and then 1. Like crouch dash down forward and let go into 1. It's basically while standing 1 in that case. It might require a little bit of practice, even I messed up sometimes, but you can do it. Okay, now let's talk about backsway. So this into backsway gives him backsway options. So backsway 4, backsway 2, backsway 3, and backsway 1. Oh, backsway 1 plus 2. So these 5 are the options. So backsway 2, I more or less showcased it already. So this into the 2, you might see this a lot. Right? The weakness this move usually has is that it's steppable to the right. But in some situations it can track a little bit. Like you can see right there. Right? But if you step to the left, it will more or less hit you. It has a very good tracking to the left. But if you step to the right, especially if you sidewalk to the right, you will be able to make this whiff. But on block, it is safe. Malik, hello. So on block, this is safe. So usually you do want to sidestep it. But as I said, it's very, very scary to sidestep because of the backsway 4. I think I mentioned this once. Because this is one of the options he has. Backsway 4. So let's say you are stepping in this situation, right? He just does the 4, and unless you sidestep right guard very fast, you will get clipped by this. So you have to be very, very careful. Ask a question, maybe after the speed lap, bro. And that's why I usually said it's better to check him with a 13 framer than not. Then like sidestepping or backdashing, everything else is a little bit weirder. Sure, bro, what's the question? I don't know why you wanted to ask me though. But yeah, the 4 is the tracking move basically. Of course it's duckable, but you'll be ducking the mid, which you don't want to happen. Now let's talk about the 1, which is also pretty common. 0. Right? So backsway 1 is really, really common usually. Because it's 0 on block and does chip damage. So 0 and 7 chip damage. It's really good because it also stops you from stepping from one direction. And if you're P1, it's especially good for the Paul player. Because QCB2, which usually is steppable to the left, you can't step it anymore. Because you're P1 and you're forced to crouch. Right? So now his moves that are usually steppable to the right becomes much stronger. Can you get a keyboard? What keyboard, bro? No, you cannot get a keyboard. Does that answer the question? So yeah, that's why this move is so good, and you'll usually see this into down 1. And you will see this a lot because people try to step in the situation. And you cannot step down 1 to the left. But you also cannot step to the right in this situation either. Right? You cannot because you're forced to crouch if you're P1. So that makes the situation way stronger if you're P1. That's why you'll see this a lot. The weakness this move also has is tracking, just like the 2. But a Paul player might use it in a situation when you won't be able to step it. So it's very good to know the block property. And on hit, it gives like something guaranteed, maybe something like this. I'm not even sure. I think that's guaranteed. And on counter hit, it's a launcher. So it's very, very good. Very good move. Now let's talk about the 3. So backsway 3, this is the low option he has. Which has a follow-up. There's 2 follow-ups actually. So let's talk about backsway 3. So backsway 3 is the 18 frame low. Right? Which high crushes. So this is his high crush option and the low option, basically. It doesn't have the best of reach, and it's very, very punishable by itself, but as I said, it has follow-ups. Right? So this mid right here is -10. You get 1-1 to it. Or you cannot sidestep it or do anything against it on hit. You can't even punch parry it. You cannot do that. So you have to be blocking it. But at least it's -10. It's punishable, right? Not a lot of people know this actually. This is very, very important to know that just the second hit is punishable. But now comes the problem of punishing it. So this has two follow-ups after the mid. One is this high. So let's say you punish this. This high will catch you. And you can't even down jab here. If you down jab, you'll still get hit. There's no option select here. So you kind of have to guess if they finish or not. So if you duck it, obviously you can duck and launch it for it, right? It's a high. But now there's a second follow-up as well. This... I forgot the input. This into the mid. This mid into this one. So if you duck and stay ducking for a long time, instead of doing like a fuzzy or something, right? This will catch you. It doesn't give anything guaranteed because it just throws you away very far. But it will catch your duck. Or if you press and try to punish this, you will also get hit by this. You will get hit. And it's a countered launcher, so you have to be very careful. But when it comes to Kazuya, we actually have a very big advantage that this is -13 and full crouch. Force crouch. So Kaz can actually launch this. So this is a big advantage that we have when it comes to this move. Shadow, thank you for following. Thank you for following. So remember this follow-up. Sometimes punish the mid because not a lot of people finish. Well, a lot of Paul players do this and they actually confirm a counter hit. If they counter hit, then they finish. If no, they don't. So you have to be very careful about this. Oh, Twix, thank you for the raid, man. Raided me right in the middle of the speed lap too. Big thank you, bro. Hope you had a good stream. So yeah, be careful about this string. But now let's talk about the last one. Backsway 1+2. So this backsway 1+2 is usually used for high crush purposes. Like I demonstrated this before in this situation. That the Paul player might bait your jabs here, right? And use this to just launch you. So it's a very strong high crushing move that's only -14 and the normal hit launcher. And comes out pretty fast. Pick their players. Don't ask me, bro. Don't ask me. One of the mysteries of the universe. And this kind of situation can happen in many backsway situations. It's not only just this. Down forward 1 is also a very common way to go into backsway. So if they do something like this, down forward 1+2, your jabs will be eaten here. Right? Unless you have a good hitbox low, like a Magic 4 for example. This has decent hitbox. Kazuya's Magic 4. Your jabs will be eaten, and your 2 jab will be eaten. So you have to be very careful in this situation. It's one of the setups. So that's more or less about the backsway. And the options he has after it. And now we have to talk about the forward sway and the new stats. Dude, I didn't think there was so much to talk about Paul. I actually forgot about this character. So forward sway. So forward sway 1 is one of the most common tools that Paul players might use to just catch you against the normal hit launcher. Think of it like as a mini electric in a way. I did 2. Wait, let me do 3. Can I do 3? I cannot. But yeah, this usually is very weak to sidesteps, but you have to be very careful about this on block. So it's only -4. It's not that much minus, but it leaves him a little bit closer than normal. So you have to be careful about this move. The biggest QCF move, so forward sway move you have to look out for is the 3. This move right here. So this is basically their low check, which is also a high crush, right? I talked about this move once at the start, that this is basically their go-to option if they don't want to get hit by electrics. But it is -14 on block. The only thing you have to be looking out for is to not get countered by this. Because the counter hit... What did I do? I just want this. Counter hit is pretty scary. I think Demo Man is guaranteed. It used to be a launcher in Dengen 7, but I'm not sure if it is a launcher anymore. Maybe with the Heat Burst. But yeah, be careful about this move. Just don't get countered. Just. But yeah, as I said, be careful. There's also a deathfist. I think everyone knows this move. It's a fucking deathfist. This will kill you. So be careful about ducking. If the Paul player has like a very hard read, maybe they'll mix this up with this. Who knows? That hurts. But very, very important thing about Kaz, this changed by the way, so it's very important for Kaz players. Normally in the previous games we had like 4-4-2 for a punish, which is a long range high punch that we had. We no longer have that. So it's minus 17 with a lot of pushback. You can sometimes electric this, but usually it will work. Right? In that situation it works. Close up that fist, it will work. So if you have the awareness, sometimes electricking it is good. But if you want the most consistent punish here, you have two options. One is forward 3, which is very consistent, right? 17 frame, long range kick. Second is back 4, which I think is the superior option. So if you back 4 here, it will more or less hit him, and it will also get you a heat. Get you into a heat, the heat engager. So if you want something very consistent, back 4. That's your go-to. I see some people doing forward 4-2, but it doesn't work. It will usually just not work. So either back 4 or forward 3 if you want something consistent, and electric if they're very close. And it's exactly the same kind of punish when it comes to this. So this, down 4, is his low mix-up from very, very close up. So I talked about Death Fist. That's basically his mid mix-up and his second mid mix-up, which usually if they want to stay safe, they'll use this a lot more, is QCB2. So this is his mid mix-up, most of the time, not Death Fist. So if they want to mix you up, they might do QCB4, not QCB4, QCB2. I already talked about the weakness of this. You can sidestep it right, but you have to time it, obviously. But let's talk about the low mix-up. The low mix-up is usually down 4 at very close range. So now let's talk about this move. So this move is basically like a hell sweep. It comes out really fast, it's 15 frames fast, and doesn't launch you unless it's a clean hit. So you have to be very close for this to work, right? As you guys saw, it hit me, but this is not guaranteed. Right? So that's why against Paul, it's very, very important to keep backdashing. Never stop backdashing. If you stop backdashing, they will mix you up with this a lot, and you do not want to get mixed up with this. You just don't. That's why it's so scary to be at the wall against Paul, because you can't backdash anymore. It's very, very scary. So about this move. When you block it, it's almost exactly the same as the Death Fist. The only exception here is that you can almost never electric this unless it's at the wall. Even close range, you cannot electric this. So the best kind of punish is exactly the same as Death Fist. Either back 4 here, or forward 3. So these two is basically your go-to punishes. You can't really use anything else. Forward 3 does a little bit more damage, but I prefer the heat engager, to be honest. Personally. But you can use forward 3 if you want to. Okay. So that's basically the mix-up that Paul players will go for with this or this. So we covered the forward sway just a little bit. Of course, forward sway also allows the Paul player to do while standing moves, as I already mentioned. Forward sway into while standing 1-2, for example, right? This will be very common. Very, very common. And the other lows, I'm just gonna briefly mention this low as well. It's back 4. I don't see it that much, but this is also one of the lows he has. Is this basically like a stature kick low? Yeah, back 4. So back 4 is a 20 frame low. It's plus 4, like you know mine. Does less damage, and it's minus 12. Basically like a stature kick. But the Paul player won't use this low that much because of your electrics being a thing. If you electric keep out him a lot, back 4 will get caught, basically. So that's why they will usually use that high crushing one, which is the QCF3. Okay. So I want to mention this a little bit briefly. I don't see this that much though, personally. It also has a counter property. Exactly like our stature kick. This is exactly like Kazuya's stature kick, basically. Plus 17. But now let's talk about the new stance, which is kind of crazy to me. So the new stance is accessed by forward sway down forward. This weird animation. I don't know what they call this a stance, but I don't know what the hell this is. So this down forward animation, this is actually a stance, and he has access to new moves here. So let's talk about this a little bit. Python for follow, man. And yeah, nothing is guaranteed on counter strike back 4. Even though it's plus 7, nothing is guaranteed. Just like Kazuya's. So let's talk about this. So this grants access to down forward 2. This punch right here. And if you guys paid attention, this punch is exactly the same punch as this one. This punch. It's exactly the same one. So this down forward 2, this is a new stance down forward 2. Basically, I don't know what the stance is called. It's exactly the same, minus 10. And has exactly the same mix-ups as this. The high and the mid. This messed up. This mid, exactly the same. And this high. And the frames are exactly the same as well, so I don't even need to go over them. I already talked about the backsway 3, so exactly the same. He also has some different moves here as well. Like this 4, which I think is the most important one that we need to talk about. So this new stance into the 4 is a very, very long range low. Very long range low. That can also high crush. Right? And the electric will not work here. The high crushing low. And high crush is very, very early on. Right? Very early on. This is the most important low Paul players have against someone like us or against someone that has like good high checks or high keep out. And this move is very, very strong against us especially. Because this, you would think it would be minus 13. It is not. It is minus 12. So you cannot launch it with TP. Even if you could, it whiffs anyway. So, yeah. While standing 4-4. Is this whiffs. And it's not minus 13. So it's a very, very strong move. But at least it doesn't have a counter property. And this is the only thing it does. It's a 0 on hit low that forces crouch for Paul. And does 12 damage. It's not too bad. But it's pretty good against people with electrics. Basically. Yeah, property-wise, Paul's back 4 is pretty similar to Kazuya's down back 4. Pretty similar. So you have to be aware of this move a lot. Best way to deal with it, if you want like maximum reward, of course you can low parry it. Then you can sometimes sidestep it. But because it's a forward sway move and moves so much, it's hard to step unless you time it perfectly. And it tracks to the right, which usually you want to be stepping anyway, right? But as I say, it has good tracking. That just hits me. So it's very, very hard to step because of the forward sway. And the last move he has, which is the best move for me personally, it's this one. I love this move. When I first found out about this move, it looks so cool. I love it. Like, it doesn't really have a mix-up. This is the only mix-up it has. It's not that scary anyway. But this move is it's hilarious. I love this move. So this move is a mid that Paul just jumps very high in the air. If you do duck, you're gonna get hit for like 32 damage. But Paul actually damages himself here as well. It's a very, very fun move. You can punish this with a forward. Can you heat burst? No! You cannot. Yeah, this is sick. Forward is the punish here. And at the wall, it's a 2-hit. Yeah, this is a 2-hit. Yeah, this is a very cool move. I really like this. But I doubt you'll see it almost ever. But if you do, respect to the Paul player. It's a very, very cool move. So, yeah. I think we covered his non-heat state already, more or less. I think I talked so much about this guy. Now we have to talk about the heat one. So what does heat change? QCF 3+4? Oh, I didn't cover this usually because I don't think Paul players use this as much. But I should still say it. Yeah, QCF 3+4. Good thing that you reminded me. So QCF 3+4 usually was way stronger. And I don't see it used as much. That's why I kind of wanted to gloss over it, but it's still better to mention this. Also, I should probably mention the 3 as well. Almost forgot. So QCF 3+4 is a mid mix-up that can be used as a mix-up with either this or, Demo Man. Or even this. It's a mid mix-up. The weakness it has, usually, is that it can be stepped, right? But this particular move has good tracking to the right, which is, normally you want to step that way. But it has good tracking to the right and less tracking to the left. But if you do step it, you usually will get faults back. But normally this is a safe mid which gives him a safe death, not safe death fist, a free death fist on normal hit, right? This death fist, this is a combo. That's a lot of damage, almost 60 damage. And it's a launcher on counter hit, so it's very, very good in that regard. But I don't personally see it used that much. Yeah, Jojo counter launch. It's an instant tornado though, but it's still really, really good. Like, really good. Okay. And now let's talk about the 3. So 3 is usually what the good Paul players might use to check you, because they can confirm the 2. That's why I wanted to briefly cover this. So 3-2 usually is a very common string that a lot of people know, that they just duck and, you know, launch. But a good Paul player might use this just to check you. If they see the hit, they might confirm the 2. Because, you know, kinda confirmable. But 3 by itself is -7 with good pushback. And that's why it's so good to do something like this. Because even if you block this, you can't really press anything. Because if the Paul player just backdashes once, basically everything you do whiffs. So you have to be very, very careful in this situation. But I also don't see this happen that much. Maybe I haven't played against good enough Paul players, but yeah, as I said, he's a rare character. Okay, now let's talk about Heat. Let's talk about Heat. Now, Heat Paul, this is something you never want to see. Paul and Heat. Especially this, Paul and Heat in your face. You do not want to see this, ever. Or even worse, Paul and Heat in your face at the wall. That's even worse. That's like a nightmare incarnate. You don't want that. So you guys remember when I said that this is a mix-up, right? That's a mix-up in close range. So if a Paul player is close, it's pretty scary, because you kind of force you to duck. And I said to backdash a lot against it, which is still gonna be the tactic even in Heat. But now in Heat, this is still a thing. But now his Death Fist becomes powered up. So let's record this. Heat, Death Fist. So his Death Fist, instead of being a normal -17, becomes -13. Saw that, right? It's -13 with still very good pushback. So unless you have something very long range or good enough range, 13 framer that will reach this, like something like down back 1 doesn't even reach. Like my down back 1 has very good range. This has very, very good range, but it doesn't reach. I cannot punish that move. So it's basically an unpunishable safe Death Fist. Basically. And they will use this as a mix-up. So if you do duck, close range, goodbye to like 51 damage. Or 51 HP. So that's one thing. But this is also a hit move. So this can be cancelled into a combo. Shitty combo, but you understand, right? This is a combo now. Comboable Death Fist. That's very, very scary. So as I said, Heat Paul, you do not want that in your life. You just don't. If a Paul player is in Heat, usually you just, I don't know, hope and pray that he runs out of heat somehow. Just mash against him just so he doesn't use his moves. Just think of a way to, you know, get out of the situation. So you have Paul in Heat. Very, very strong because of that. But there's also many other reasons he's so strong. It's because his charger moves, which I covered earlier in the vid, become stronger. So how do they become stronger? I'm demonstrated just so you guys can see it as well. Go on Heat, man. So if you respect it, this becomes a guard break. So this is a -12 guard break, which guarantees a back 1-2. So basically, if that guard break hits you and you block it, this is guaranteed. This is guaranteed. Or this is guaranteed. Both of them are guaranteed. What does that mean? Well, that means at the wall, that's a wall splat. And that means outside of the wall, it's like 350 damage. Into, you know, this opening. It's very, very good. That's why you have to remember, when I talked about the holding moves, that usually sidestepping it at a particular timing is the way you have to deal with this. But that's only at the neutral. And it's exactly the same as this one. Damage scales. Damage scales a little bit, but the damage is still a lot. So in heat, this has exactly the same property. I forgot to go in heat. So down 1, let's say respected, -12, guard break. That hurts. Other thing for follow. So it does 13 chip damage and guarantees a back 1-2 or a shoulder. So it hurts. So as I said, when I mentioned these moves, sidestepping is usually the way to deal with this. With this particular one, you sidestep to the right at the particular timing, just so you don't get hit by the non-charge up mix-up. In no way you want to press. But this only applies in the neutral. So, now let me cover one of the most disgusting setups Paul has. I don't know the exact setup, but I'll just say it, just so you guys know. The setup is pretty simple. That's the word I was looking for. It's either at the wall or at the end of the combo when they do back 2 and charge up this, right? Or in the same regard when they do this. That is the only situation when you want to press against this charge up. Let me see if I can recreate this. I'll try. I doubt I can, but I will try.
Activate my credit card!
I have learned so much from your stream and looking forward to every future one.
Primordial, thank you, man. Big thank you for the subscription. Big thank you. I love that voice. That voice the best. But okay, let's see if we can actually... Let's do this and do something like this. There we go. It's something similar to that, basically. So you get wall splat. You cannot tech roll there. And if you do get up, you are gonna get... wait. Braked. So imagine Paul's in heat in this situation. He's not in heat right now, but imagine he is. Then he was gonna get a free back 2-1, or back 1-2. And you won't be able to sidestep in this situation because you just got up. So what do you do here? Usually the best solution here will be to jab, but you have to be very careful in certain situations. Because for example, this one, sometimes it's better to just stay on the ground or side roll. But there are many situations like this. As I said, I don't know the exact ones, but there are some situations when you have to jab him. There are some situations when you have to side roll and stay on the ground. There are some situations when you, I don't know, kind of eat it most of the, not most of the time, but sometimes you just eat it. Because, you know, maybe you select the wrong option, sometimes it's a mix-up, basically. But, when you do jab it, let's say one of the options to jab. You can roll away. Yeah, in this situation you can roll away, but as I said, there are many situations. Many. Like, this is not the right one. That's why I mentioned that I don't know how to recreate it. I don't know how to recreate it. There's some when you can't actually roll away, it still hits you. On the ground, it just hits you. So when you get up, sometimes the jab will work in those situations. But if the Paul player knows that you're jabbing, they might just, you know, end it early and you'll get counter launched. You will just get it launched. So you have to be very careful in this situation. It's basically a mix-up. So it's very strong. I don't know how to exactly lab this. This is one of the things I still need to lab. But as I said, I don't know the situation yet. I haven't played against enough Paul players to know it well enough. But if you guys find out, not find out, but actually, you know, encounter it, at least you'll know what the situation is because I explained it at least verbally. Sorry I can't actually show it visually, but yeah. Also about Paul and heat. It's very important to know that his heat also enables a much better low mix-up, which is better than this. Which is a heat smash, this one. So it's a 40 damage low that does not require clean hit anymore, so from any range, as long as it reaches, right? The range isn't the best out of the low heat smashes, but if it reaches, this will just immediately hit you. And the worst of all about this move is that you can't low parry because the heat smash, right? You can't low parry heat smashes. And when you block it, it's only -12.
My credit card.
So you have to be very careful, very careful. Damn, Zekto, big thank you, man. Big thank you for the sub. So yeah, very careful about this low mix-up. This makes Paul's mids way scarier. And as I said, Paul is very scary in heat. You do not want to have Paul in heat in your face, especially at the wall. That's nightmare. Nightmare material. I'm repeating myself, but I'll say it again. Nightmare material. So yeah, this character has decent moves, decent punishment. Like his back 1-2 is good. His 10 frame punish isn't good, but I don't think this character is bad. Like the way this character is, I don't think this character can be bad. Shoulder setups at the wall. Yeah, I'll mention that as well. Oh, that's actually pretty good that you reminded me of that. The shoulder setups are usually like very, very common setups that people usually do in like this kind of situations, you know? This kind of situations. And they use the shoulder because it's very fast and high crushes. So the setup usually goes like something like 1-2 into shoulder. If you try to press or sidestep, maybe sometimes it will clip you and it will, what's it called? The wall splat you. So you have to be very, very careful. I don't know many specific setups. Not too many of them, but something like power crush to shoulder can be a thing and stuff like that. There's a lot of them, a lot of shoulder setups. So you have to more or less be patient at the wall, or at least try sidestepping. Wall rank 2 Oki near wall is terrifying. Yeah, wall rank 2 also gives a specific Oki as a combo ender. This is also very good to mention as well. Good thing you reminded me. So wall rank 2 is also one new move that got added for Paul, which is usually a move that Paul players end with. So let's imagine, you know, a combo and they just end with wall rank 2 like this. So it gives a particular situation when you're like head first and on the stomach, at the wall, not at the wall, on the ground. So you have to be very careful in this situation. And about this move in general, the weakness it has, in the neutral anyway, is that it is pretty linear, but it's also punishable on block. That's why you almost never see this, but if you do, at least it's punishable. So, be very careful about this. And on that Oki situation, where you know, face down head first, try to, you know, stand back up with back sometimes maybe side roll, see what the opponent does, and, you know, experiment with it. And at the wall, it's just very scary as well. At the wall, it becomes much scarier because you don't have as much space to work with. But, yeah, I think that's about it. I didn't mention a lot of stuff. I wish I could have actually showed visually the setup. Right, but thank you for following, man. I wish I could have showed visually the setup, you know, the back to 1 setup, the guard break. But I'm not too sure about how it looks. I actually haven't encountered it myself too much. I encountered it a little bit, but I don't actually remember the setups. But that's one of the things I have to lab myself as well. And I encourage you guys to actually check it out too. So, yeah, big thank you guys. Big thank you for watching YouTube. And I'll see you guys in the next one.